Racist policeman provokes Anatoly and receives a lesson he'll never forget. I never wanted trouble. But trouble has a way of finding you when you look different, when you speak with an accent, when your skin carries the dust of a land most people only see on maps they'll never visit. That night, under the flickering streetlights of a city that wasn't mine, I learned that some men wear badges not to protect, but to punish those they consider beneath them. Subscribe to this channel if you've ever been judged by the color of your skin, the sound of your voice, or the country printed on your passport. Because what happened that night wasn't just about me. It was about every person who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong. The gym closed at 11. I remember because I watched the clock on the wall as I finished my last set of deadlifts, the iron plates settling onto the platform with that familiar crash that always brought me peace. 315 kilograms. Not my heaviest, but enough to quiet the voices in my head, the ones that whispered about the past, about the things I'd left behind when I fled my country with nothing but a duffel bag and a heart full of broken promises. I showered quickly, the hot water running over muscles that ached in that good way, that way that tells you you've pushed yourself to the edge and survived. The locker room was empty. Everyone else had gone home hours ago, back to their families, their warm beds, their lives that made sense. I pulled on my worn jacket, the one with the tear in the left shoulder that I kept meaning to fix but never did, and stepped out into the cold October night. The streets were nearly empty. Just a few cars passing by, their headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights hunting for something hidden. I kept my head down, my hands in my pockets, walking the 6 blocks back to the small apartment I rented above a laundromat. The smell of detergent and fabric softener had become so familiar I barely noticed it anymore. I was 3 blocks from home when I saw the patrol car. It was parked at the corner, engine running, exhaust rising into the night air like smoke from a dragon's mouth. I didn't think anything of it at first. Police were always around this neighborhood, always watching, always waiting. I kept walking, my footsteps echoing off the brick buildings that lined the street. That's when the spotlight hit me. Bright. Blinding. Like a physical force that stopped me in my tracks. Hold it right there. The voice came from behind the light, harsh and commanding. I raised my hand to shield my eyes, my heart already beginning to pound in that old familiar rhythm, the one that knew danger before my mind could process it. Turn around slowly. Hands where I can see them. I did as I was told. I always did. In my country, not following police orders could get you disappeared. Here I'd learned it could get you shot. I turned slowly, raising my hands to shoulder height, palms open. 2 officers emerged from the patrol car. The first one was tall, maybe 6'2", with a thick neck and shoulders that suggested he spent time in the gym but not enough to matter. The second was shorter, stockier, with a face that looked like it had been carved from stone by someone who'd given up halfway through. It was the tall one who spoke. "What are you doing out here this time of night?" His hand rested on his belt, inches from his service weapon. The shorter one circled around to my side, positioning himself so I couldn't watch both of them at once. "I'm walking home," I said, keeping my voice calm, neutral. "From the gym." "The gym." The tall officer's lip curled slightly. "What gym?" "Iron House. 3 blocks back." "Iron House closes at 10:11 on Thursdays." He stepped closer, and that's when I saw it. The look in his eyes. I'd seen it before, back home, in the eyes of men who decided you were less than human before you'd even opened your mouth. It wasn't anger. It was something colder. Something that had been taught and practiced and perfected over years. "You got ID?" I reached slowly for my wallet, moving deliberately so they could see every motion. My fingers found the worn leather, pulled it from my back pocket. "Slowly," the tall officer barked. I opened the wallet, extracted my resident card, the one that proved I had permission to be here, to exist in this country that still didn't quite feel like home. He snatched it from my hand, studied it under his flashlight. Anatoly Purovich. He butchered the pronunciation, turning my family name into something ugly. "Where's that from?" "Russia. One of those Soviet countries." "I'm not. I didn't ask you to speak." His eyes narrowed. "You people come here, think you can just walk around like you own the place. Probably dealing drugs, right? That's what you were doing at the gym." He made air quotes with his fingers, my ID card still clutched in his fist. "Have you ever felt your blood turn cold while your face burns hot? Have you ever had to swallow words that could save your dignity but destroy your life? In just a moment, you'll understand why I chose silence over pride that night. The shorter officer moved closer, his hand also near his weapon now. Why don't you empty your pockets for us, Anatoly? I wanted to refuse. I wanted to tell them they had no right, that I'd done nothing wrong, that walking while foreign wasn't a crime in this country. But I'd heard the stories. I'd seen the news. I knew how these things could end. I emptied my pockets slowly. Keys, wallet, phone, a crumpled receipt from the protein shop. $23 in cash. The tall officer picked up the cash, held it up to the light like he'd discovered something significant. $23. Where'd you get this money? I work. Doing what? Construction. Renovation projects. Under the table, I bet. Cash payments. No taxes. He smiled, and it was the cruelest thing I'd seen all week. That's illegal, you know. We could bring you in for that alone. My hands were still raised, starting to ache from the position. The cold was seeping through my jacket, but I was sweating underneath it, my shirt sticking to my back. I pay taxes, I said quietly. I have pay stubs. Oh, he has pay stubs. The officer looked at his partner, mocking. Hear that? Our friend here is a law-abiding citizen. He turned back to me. Then why do you look so nervous? What are you hiding? I wasn't hiding anything. But fear doesn't need a reason when you're standing in the street at midnight with two armed men who've already decided you're guilty of the crime of being different. Turn around, the tall officer commanded. Hands on the wall. There was a brick building to my right, the wall covered in old posters and graffiti. I placed my palms against it, the rough surface cold against my skin. Spread your legs. I did. The pat-down was rougher than it needed to be. Hands running up my legs, along my sides, across my back. Checking my waistband, my ankles, my chest. Looking for weapons I didn't have, drugs I'd never touched. He's clean, the shorter officer finally said. But the tall one wasn't satisfied. I could feel it in the air, that hunger for something, anything, that would justify what he wanted to do. What's with the muscles? He asked, his hand gripping my shoulder hard enough to hurt. You on steroids? That's illegal too, you know. I train natural. Sure you do. He spun me around, forcing my back against the wall. All you people do is lie. Come to our country, take our jobs, deal your drugs, pump yourselves full of chemicals. You people. Those two words that reduce a human being to a category, another something less than. I don't. His hand came up fast, not quite touching my throat but close enough that I could feel the threat. I told you not to speak unless spoken to. You got a hearing problem along with whatever else is wrong with you. The shorter officer shifted uncomfortably. Daniels, maybe we should. Should what? Officer Daniels, now I had a name for the face I'd remember forever, turned on his partner. Let him go. So he can go back to whatever hole he crawled out of and tell all his friends they can do whatever they want in this neighborhood. He hasn't done anything wrong. He's out past midnight in a high-crime area with no good reason. He said he was at the gym. And you believe him? Daniels laughed, but there was no humor in it. Look at him. You really think someone who looks like that belongs at a legitimate gym? Do you know what it feels like to have your humanity debated while you stand silent, powerless, hoping that the better angels of a stranger's nature will prevail? You're about to learn what I learned in that moment, that sometimes those angels don't exist. The shorter officer looked away, and in that look, in that surrender, I knew I was alone. Daniel stepped closer, his face inches from mine. I could smell coffee on his breath, stale and bitter. You're going to stay right here while we search your bag. My gym bag. The one I'd set down when the spotlight first hit me, now lying on the sidewalk like evidence at a crime scene. You need a warrant for. I need probable cause, which I have. Suspicious behavior, late-night activity, presence in a high-crime area. That's all the probable cause I need. He nodded to his partner. Check the bag. The shorter officer picked up my bag, unzipped it. Inside, a change of clothes, a towel, a water bottle, a notebook where I recorded my workouts, a worn paperback book in my native language that I read during rest periods. He pulled out the book, held it up. The cover was in Cyrillic letters. What's this? A book. I can see it's a book. What's it say? It's a novel. Fiction. Daniel snatched it from his partner's hand, flipped through the pages like the words themselves were suspicious. How do we know this isn't some kind of terrorist manual? Some coded message? It's Tolstoy, I said, my voice flat. Anna Karenina. I don't care if it's the Bible. It's in terrorist language. It's Russian literature. Same difference. He threw the book back in the bag. What else you got in here? Weapons. Drugs. The shorter officer continued his search, pulling out each item, examining it, setting it on the dirty sidewalk. My clean clothes. My towel. My notebook. Everything I owned that mattered, laid bare for their judgment. There's nothing here, Daniels. But Daniels wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed on me, searching for something, any excuse to escalate this encounter into something worse. Take off your jacket. It's freezing. I said take off your jacket. I removed it slowly, the cold night air hitting my arms. I was wearing a tank top underneath, the one I'd changed into after my shower. My arms were exposed, the muscles defined from years of training, from thousands of hours under the bar, from the discipline that had saved my life when everything else had fallen apart. Daniel stared at my arms like they were weapons. Look at this. He grabbed my right bicep, squeezing it. No way this is natural. You're on something. Steroids. GH. Something. I train 6 days a week. I eat clean. I sleep 8 hours. That's the only something I'm on. Liar. His grip tightened. You're all liars. Come here with your foreign muscles and your foreign language and your foreign ways, thinking you're better than us. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. Me, thinking I was better than anyone. Me who'd fled my country with nothing, who'd worked the worst jobs for the worst pay, who'd slept in homeless shelters until I could afford a room, who'd been treated like dirt so many times I'd lost count. Me, who'd never asked for anything but the chance to exist in peace. But I didn't laugh. Because laughing at a man with a gun and a badge and a heart full of hate is a luxury I couldn't afford. I'm going to ask you one more time, Daniel said, his face so close I could see the broken blood vessels in his eyes. What are you really doing out here? What's your real business in this neighborhood? I live here. Where? 6 blocks that way. Above the laundromat. Prove it. My address is on my ID. The one you're holding. He looked down at the card in his hand, and I saw something flicker across his face. Disappointment. He'd been hoping I'd lie, hoping for any excuse. This address could be fake. Call the landlord. His number's in my phone. Or, Daniel said slowly, we could just take you in. Let you sit in a cell for a few hours while we verify your story. How does that sound? It sounded like every nightmare I'd had since coming to this country. It sounded like the past I'd tried to escape. It sounded like proof that no matter how far you run, some things follow you. Have you ever had to choose between your pride and your freedom? Between standing up for yourself and surviving another day? The decision I made in that moment would change everything. But first, you need to understand where I came from. I grew up in a small city you've never heard of, in a country that stopped existing on maps when I was 12 years old. My father was a factory worker. My mother cleaned houses for families who wouldn't let her use their bathrooms. We lived in a 3-room apartment with my grandmother and 2 uncles, all of us squeezed into a space meant for one family. I learned early that the world was divided into those who had power and those who survived at their pleasure. I learned that keeping your head down was a survival skill. I learned that sometimes staying silent was the only way to see tomorrow. But I also learned that there are moments when silence becomes complicity, when keeping your head down means losing the last piece of yourself that matters. This was one of those moments. I looked Officer Daniels in the eye and spoke clearly, calmly, with every ounce of control I developed over years of swallowing my pride. You can take me in if that's what you need to do. But we both know I haven't broken any laws. We both know the only thing I'm guilty of is walking home from the gym while being foreign. And we both know that in about 6 hours, when your supervisor asks why you arrested a legal resident for the crime of existing, you're not going to have a good answer. His jaw clenched. The hand near his gun twitched. Unless, I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "You want to add resisting arrest to the charges, which would require me to actually resist, which I won't. So you'd have to manufacture that too." The street was silent except for the distant sound of traffic, the hum of the patrol car's engine, the ragged breathing of two men locked in a battle neither could win. "You threatening me?" Daniels asked quietly. "No, sir. Just stating facts." "Facts?" He repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "You want to talk about facts? Here's a fact. I could make your life very difficult. I could make it so you get stopped every time you walk these streets. I could make it so every cop in this district knows your face, knows to watch you, knows to find reasons to question you. How would you like that?" "I wouldn't. But I'd survive it. I've survived worse." And that was true. I'd survived watching my uncle disappear for speaking against the government. I'd survived the year my mother got sick and we couldn't afford medicine. I'd survived crossing 3 borders with false papers, sleeping in bus stations, working 18-hour days in jobs that paid below minimum wage. I'd survived being beaten by skinheads in Berlin, robbed in Warsaw, spit on in Vienna. I'd survived by understanding that some battles you win by not fighting, by being stronger than the hate directed at you, by refusing to become what they already believe you are. Officer Daniels stared at me for a long moment. I could see him calculating, weighing his options, trying to decide if the satisfaction of taking me in was worth the paperwork, the questions, the potential complications. His partner finally spoke up. "Daniels, come on. Let's just go. There's real crime we could be addressing." "Real crime," Daniels muttered. But his hand moved away from his gun. "Yeah. Real crime." He threw my ID card at my feet. It landed in a puddle, the photo of my face staring up from the dirty water. "Pick it up." I bent down, retrieved it, wiped it on my jeans. "You got lucky tonight," Daniel said. "But luck runs out. Remember that next time you're walking around like you own the place." "I don't own anything," I said quietly. "I just want to live in peace." "Peace." He laughed, that same humorless sound. "You people don't know the meaning of the word." They got back in their patrol car. The engine revved. The spotlight clicked off, leaving me standing in the darkness, my belongings scattered on the sidewalk, my heart still pounding, my hands shaking from something that was equal parts cold and rage and relief. The patrol car pulled away, and I stood there watching its taillights disappear around the corner. Then I knelt down and began gathering my things. My towel was dirty now, covered in street grime. My notebook had landed in the same puddle as my ID card, the pages soaked through, the carefully recorded numbers of my training sessions running together in blue ink. My book, Anna Karenina, the same copy my grandmother had given me when I left home, lay open on the concrete, its spine cracked. I picked up each item slowly, carefully, like they were pieces of myself I was putting back together. And that's when I felt it. Not the cold. Not the fear. Something else. Something that had been building inside me since the moment that spotlight hit me, since the moment Daniels had looked at me like I was trash. Anger. Pure, white-hot, righteous anger. Not at being stopped. Not at being questioned. But at being dehumanized. At being treated like my existence was an offense. At being guilty of nothing more than being foreign, different, other. I'd swallowed that anger before. I'd swallowed it 1,000 times. Every time someone had made a joke about my accent. Every time someone had assumed I was stupid because English wasn't my first language. Every time someone had treated me like a suspect instead of a person. But something about this night was different. Maybe it was because I was tired. Maybe it was because I'd been working 70 hours a week for 6 months trying to save enough money to bring my sister over from the old country. Maybe it was because I'd spent my whole life being told I was less than, and some part of me had finally had enough. I stood up, my bag in my hand, my ruined belongings clutched against my chest, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this go. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted to get Officer Daniels in trouble. But because silence in the face of injustice is its own form of surrender, and I'd surrendered enough in my life. I walked the remaining 3 blocks to my apartment, climbed the stairs to my door, let myself in. The small space was cold. I kept the heat low to save money, but it was mine. These walls, this space, this life I'd built from nothing. I dropped my bag on the floor and stood in the darkness for a long moment. Then I turned on the light and began to make a plan. Do you know what it takes to fight a system designed to protect itself? Do you know what it takes to stand up when standing up might cost you everything? You're about to learn what I learned in the days that followed that night on the street. The first thing I did was document everything. I wrote down every detail I could remember. The exact time, the location, the patrol car number, the names of both officers, every word that was spoken. My hand shook as I wrote, the anger still fresh, but I forced myself to be precise, factual, clinical. The second thing I did was reach out to my friend Marcus. Marcus was a paralegal I'd met at the gym, a black man in his 40s who'd taken me under his wing when I first arrived in the neighborhood. He taught me which streets to avoid, which shops would serve me without attitude, how to navigate a city that wasn't always welcoming to people who looked like us. When I told him what had happened, there was a long silence on the phone. "You want to file a complaint," he finally said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." Another pause. "Anatoly, you know how this goes. You're foreign, he's a cop. His word against yours. The system protects its own." "I know. You could make things worse for yourself." Daniels meant what he said. "He could make your life hell." "I know that too." "Then why do it?" I looked down at my ruined notebook, at the ink-stained pages that represented months of progress, of discipline, of the slow building of something better than the life I'd left behind. "Because if I don't," I said slowly, "then he wins. And every time I walk these streets, every time I see a police car, I'll remember that I let him win. I'll remember that I was exactly what he thought I was. Powerless, invisible, not worth fighting for." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, "All right, let me help you do this right." Over the next 3 days, Marcus and I built a case. We filed a formal complaint with the police department's Internal Affairs Division. We documented everything in triplicate. We reached out to civil rights organizations. Marcus even helped me find a lawyer who worked pro bono for cases like mine. The lawyer was a woman named Sarah Chan, a second-generation immigrant whose parents had come from Taiwan. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she looked up at me with eyes that had seen this before. "I'm going to be honest with you, Anatoly. These cases are hard to win. Police officers have qualified immunity, union protections, a system designed to shield them from accountability. Even with your documentation, even with your witness." "The other officer," I interrupted. "He was uncomfortable. He tried to tell Daniels to stop. He won't testify against his partner. They never do. So we have no chance?" She tapped her pen against her notepad. "I didn't say that. What we have is a documented pattern. I've dealt with Officer Daniels before. Other complaints, other incidents. None of them have stuck, but they're there. If we can add your case to that pattern, if we can show a history of behavior." She trailed off, thinking. "There's something else we can do," she said finally. "Something that might be more effective than a formal complaint." "What?" "We make this public." I didn't understand at first. Public how? I wasn't a citizen. I had no platform, no voice that anyone would listen to. But Sarah smiled, and it was the smile of someone who'd fought this battle before and found new weapons. "You know what you are, Anatoly? You're a perfect counter-narrative. You're legal, employed, educated, law-abiding. You're not threatening. You're not a criminal. You're exactly the kind of person the system claims to protect. And Officer Daniels treated you like trash anyway." She leaned forward. "I know a journalist. Local paper, but she's good, she's hungry, and she loves stories about police misconduct. If she writes about this, if it gets traction, the department will have to respond. They'll have to investigate. They'll have to do more than just file your complaint in a drawer and forget about it." "Will it work?" "I don't know. But it's a better shot than what we have now." I thought about my sister, still back in the old country, waiting for me to save enough money to sponsor her visa. I thought about my job, my boss who'd taken a chance on hiring me despite my accent and my foreign credentials. I thought about all the ways this could go wrong, all the ways speaking up could make my already precarious life even more unstable. Then I thought about Officer Daniels's face. That smug certainty that he could do whatever he wanted because I was nobody, nothing less than. Do it, I said. The article came out 6 days later. The headline read, "Legal resident alleges harassment by local police officer." The journalist, a woman named Patricia Gonzalez, had done her homework. She'd interviewed me for 3 hours, recording everything, double-checking every detail. She'd reached out to the police department for comment, which they'd declined. She'd found the other complaints against Daniels, the ones that had been dismissed or ignored. She'd painted a picture not just of one incident, but of a pattern. The article was published online first, then picked up by the print edition. It wasn't front page, I wasn't naive enough to expect that, but it was in the Metro section, with my photo, my story, my words. Within hours, it started spreading. Local activists shared it. Community organizations picked it up. People who'd had similar experiences reached out, adding their voices to mine. And then, 3 days after the article was published, the TV news picked it up. I came home from work to find a news van parked outside my building, a reporter and cameraman waiting by the door. "Mr. Purovich? I'm Amanda Rodriguez from Channel 7 News. We'd like to talk to you about your experience with Officer Daniels." I should have been prepared for this. Sarah had warned me it might happen. But standing there, dirty from a day of renovation work, facing a camera and a microphone, I felt completely exposed. "I don't know if..." "Please," she said. "Your story matters. People need to hear it." So I talked. Again. Told the same story, relived the same night, felt the same anger and fear and frustration. But this time it was on camera. This time, it would reach further than a newspaper article. The segment aired that evening. I watched it alone in my apartment, my hands clenched, my stomach tight. They'd done a good job. They'd shown my face, my apartment, let me tell my story in my own words. They'd included footage of the street where it happened, the gym where I trained. They'd added context about immigration, about policing, about the experiences of people like me. And they'd ended with a statement from the police department. "We take all allegations of misconduct seriously and are conducting a thorough investigation." Have you ever become a story instead of a person? Have you ever had your trauma turned into content, your pain transformed into a narrative that exists separate from you? In the next few days, I learned the cost of speaking truth to power. The attention was immediate and overwhelming. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, activists, lawyers, people who wanted to help, people who wanted to use my story for their own causes. I had to change my number twice. People recognized me on the street. Some offered support, solidarity, shared their own stories of harassment. Others, too many others, accused me of being ungrateful, of attacking the police, of trying to destroy a good officer's career. I received messages calling me a liar, a terrorist, telling me to go back where I came from. Someone spray-painted "foreign scum" on the door of my building. My landlord called, nervous, asking if I was in some kind of trouble. At work, my boss pulled me aside. "Anatoly, I saw the news." My heart sank. "I'm sorry if this causes problems for..." "Don't apologize." He put his hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing. But I want you to know if you need time off, if this gets to be too much, you tell me." "Okay." I nodded, grateful for the support but aware that even good intentions couldn't protect me from everything that was coming. The police union issued a statement defending Officer Daniels, claiming he was a decorated officer with years of service, implying without saying it directly that I was lying, exaggerating, playing the victim. Sarah called me every day, preparing me for what might come next. A lawsuit, a formal hearing, media appearances, the grinding machinery of justice that moves slowly and often in circles. But through it all, I kept training. Every day, no matter what happened, I went to the gym. I lifted weights. I ran. I pushed myself until my muscles burned and my mind went quiet. Because that's what the iron had taught me, that you can't control what the world throws at you, but you can control how you respond. You can choose to get stronger, or you can choose to break. There is no middle ground. 3 weeks after the article was published, I got a call from an unknown number. "Is this Anatoly Purovich?" The voice was unfamiliar. Male. Professional. "Yes. This is Lieutenant Marcus Thompson from Internal Affairs. I'm calling about your complaint against Officer Daniels. I'd like to schedule a formal interview with you." My heart started racing. An interview? Yes, sir. We're conducting a full investigation, and your testimony is crucial. Would you be available to come to our office this Friday at 10 a.m.? I wrote down the address, the time, the lieutenant's name. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Sarah was ecstatic when I told her. This is good. This means they're taking it seriously. They have to interview you formally, on the record. Everything you say will be part of the official investigation. What do I need to do? Tell the truth. Stick to the facts. Don't exaggerate. Don't minimize. Just tell them exactly what happened. Friday came. I wore my best clothes, a button-down shirt I usually reserve for job interviews, clean jeans, the only shoes I owned that weren't work boots. I took 2 buses to get to the Internal Affairs office, a nondescript building in a part of the city I'd never been to before. Lieutenant Thompson was a black man in his 50s, with gray hair and eyes that had seen everything. He shook my hand firmly, led me to a small conference room. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Purovich. I want you to know that we take your allegations very seriously. He turned on a recording device, stated the date, the time, who was present. Then he asked me to tell my story. I did. Again. Every detail. Every word Daniels had said. Every moment of fear, humiliation, anger. Thompson listened without interrupting, taking notes, his face impassive. When I finished, he asked questions. Specific questions. About the exact wording Daniels had used. About whether I'd felt threatened. About whether I'd filed a complaint immediately after the incident. I answered everything truthfully. When it was over, Thompson turned off the recording device and looked at me for a long moment. Off the record, he said, I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've investigated hundreds of complaints. Most of them go nowhere because they're he said, she said, and the system defaults to protecting the officer. My stomach dropped. This was where he told me nothing would happen, that Daniels would walk away clean, that I'd gone through all of this for nothing. But every once in a while, Thompson continued, you get a case where the officer screwed up so badly, was so brazen, so confident they'd never face consequences, that they left a trail. Daniels is that kind of officer. He's been complained about 7 times in the past 4 years. 7 times. And every time, it's the same pattern, targeting people who look foreign, who speak with accents, who he thinks won't fight back. He leaned forward. You fought back. And because you did, because you went public, because people are watching now, I can do my job. I can investigate properly. I can build a case. What does that mean? It means Daniels is going to face a disciplinary hearing. It means his record is going to be reviewed. It means, for the first time in his career, there might actually be consequences. I felt something loosen in my chest, some knot I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. But I need you to understand something, Thompson said. This isn't over. Daniels will deny everything. His union will fight for him. The hearing could take months. And even if we find against him, the punishment might be less than you think it should be. Suspension, retraining, maybe a demotion. Police are hard to fire, even with cause. I understand. Do you? He looked at me seriously. Because once this process starts, you can't take it back. You'll be a witness in a formal hearing. You might have to testify in court if he appeals. Your name will be attached to this forever. Every time someone Googles you, this will come up. Your employer will know. Your neighbors will know. Everyone will know. They already know, I said quietly. The news made sure of that. Thompson nodded. Fair point. He stood, extended his hand again. Thank you for your courage, Mr. Purovich. More people should do what you did. I shook his hand and left the building, stepping out into the bright afternoon sun. And for the first time since that night on the street, I felt something other than anger. I felt hope. The hearing took place 4 months later. In those 4 months I lived my life. I worked. I trained. I saved money. I video called my sister every Sunday, telling her about the city, the job, the life I was building for us. I didn't talk about Officer Daniels. I didn't talk about the case. I tried not to think about it, to let it consume me. But it was always there in the back of my mind. A weight I carried. Sarah prepared me for the hearing. Mock questions. Practice testimony. How to stay calm under cross-examination. Danielle's lawyer will try to make you look bad, she warned. They'll ask about your immigration status, your past, anything they can use to discredit you. Don't take the bait. Just answer the questions honestly. The hearing was held in a small room at the police headquarters. A panel of 3 officers sat at a table at the front. Daniels sat with his lawyer and his union representative. I sat with Sarah. There were reporters in the back. Members of the community who'd been following the case. Activists. People I'd never met who'd made my story their cause. The panel chair, a captain with 30 years on the force, called the hearing to order. They presented the evidence. My complaint, the investigation findings, statements from witnesses, Danielle's record. Then they called me to testify. I walked to the front of the room, my heart pounding. I placed my hand on the Bible they offered, swore to tell the truth, and then I told my story. One more time. For the record. For the people watching. For every person who'd ever been treated the way Daniels had treated me. When I finished, Danielle's lawyer stood up for cross-examination. He was younger than I expected, sharp in his suit, with a confident bearing of someone who'd done this many times before. Mr. Purovich, you claim you were simply walking home from the gym when Officer Daniels stopped you. Is that correct? Yes. And what time was this? Around 11:15 at night. Late hour to be walking alone in that neighborhood. I work until late. I train after work. The neighborhood where this incident occurred has a high crime rate, doesn't it? I don't know the statistics. Well, I do. That neighborhood has one of the highest rates of drug trafficking in the city. Officer Daniels was patrolling a known crime area. Isn't it reasonable that he would stop someone walking alone late at night? Sarah stood. Objection. Being in a neighborhood isn't a crime. The panel chair nodded. Sustained. Get to your point, counselor. The lawyer smiled. My point is that Officer Daniels was doing his job. He saw someone in a high-crime area acting suspiciously. I wasn't acting suspiciously, I interrupted. I was walking home. Please don't interrupt, the lawyer said smoothly. Now, Mr. Purovich, you've claimed that Officer Daniels made certain statements to you. Statements about your nationality, your appearance. But there were no recordings of this encounter, were there? No. No body camera footage, no dash cam footage, no third-party witnesses except Officer Daniel's partner, who disputes your version of events. He was there. He saw everything. And his statement says that Officer Daniels conducted a routine stop, asked for identification, and released you when everything checked out. No harassment. No inappropriate comments. Nothing like what you've alleged. I looked at the shorter officer, sitting in the audience. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He's lying, I said quietly. Or perhaps you're mistaken. Perhaps in the stress of the moment, you misinterpreted what was said. Perhaps you. I know what I heard. My voice was firm now. I know what he said. I know how he made me feel. And I know that what happened that night was wrong. The lawyer paused, then changed tactics. Mr. Purovich, you're not a U.S. citizen, are you? I'm a legal permanent resident. But not a citizen. You're here on a green card. Yes. Have you ever been arrested? No. Ever had any run-ins with police before this incident? No. So you have no reason to dislike or distrust police officers. I didn't. Until that night. Or perhaps, the lawyer said, walking closer, you saw an opportunity. You saw a chance to become famous, to get attention, to paint yourself as a victim of the big bad American police system. That's not. You've done quite well out of this, haven't you? News interviews, articles about you, community support. That must feel good for someone who came from nothing. I felt my jaw clench. Sarah touched my arm, a silent reminder to stay calm. I didn't ask for any of that, I said slowly. I just wanted to file a complaint about being harassed. Harassed. That's a strong word. Is it possible that you're overly sensitive? That you see prejudice where none exists? Is it possible, I shot back, that you've never been stopped by police for the crime of being foreign, So you don't understand what it feels like? The room went quiet. The lawyer stared at me. Please just answer the questions, Mr. Purovich. I am answering. You're asking me if I imagined being told I look like a terrorist. If I imagined being called, you people. If I imagined being searched and humiliated on a public street for no reason except that Officer Daniels didn't like my face. And I'm telling you, I didn't imagine any of it. It happened. And the fact that his partner is too scared to tell the truth doesn't make it any less real. Do you know what it feels like to speak truth to power and have power call you a liar? Do you know what it feels like to be brave and have bravery dismissed as attention-seeking? You're about to see how this story ends. But first, you need to know what it cost me to get here. The hearing lasted another 2 hours. They called other witnesses, Lieutenant Thompson, who testified about his investigation, a use-of-force expert who explained department policies, character witnesses for Daniels, fellow officers who swore he was a good cop, a family man, someone who'd never shown prejudice. Through it all, Daniels sat silent, his face impassive, like he was bored by the proceedings. When it was finally over, the panel chair announced they would deliberate and deliver their decision within 30 days. 30 days! I walked out of that hearing room exhausted, drained, feeling like I'd given everything I had and not knowing if it would be enough. Sarah put her hand on my shoulder. You did great. You told the truth. That's all you could do. Will it be enough? She hesitated. I don't know. But you should be proud of yourself regardless. The 30 days felt like 30 years. I went back to work, back to the gym, back to my routine. But every day I wondered. Every day I imagined what the panel was discussing, what they were deciding, whether they believed me. I imagined them dismissing the complaint, exonerating Daniels, calling me a liar. I imagined the news coverage if that happened. The vindication Daniels would feel. The message it would send to every officer like him, that you can treat people like trash and get away with it. I imagined giving up, going back to my quiet life, forgetting this ever happened. But I also imagined the alternative. On day 29, Sarah called me. The decision is in. They're announcing it tomorrow at 10 a.m. Can you be there? I could barely sleep that night. The next morning, I put on the same clothes I'd worn to the hearing. I took the same 2 buses. I walked into the same building. The announcement was made in a different room, larger, with more people. Reporters, community members, activists, police officers. Daniels was there, in full uniform, sitting with his lawyer. The panel chair stood at a podium. After careful deliberation and review of all evidence presented, this panel has reached a decision regarding Officer James Daniels. The room went silent. We find that Officer Daniels violated department policy regarding respectful treatment of civilians. We find that his conduct during the interaction with Mr. Purovich was unprofessional and inappropriate. We find that he demonstrated bias based on national origin. I felt Sarah grab my hand. Therefore, Officer Daniels is hereby suspended without pay for 90 days. He will undergo mandatory retraining in cultural sensitivity and appropriate use of authority. He will be placed on probationary status for 1 year following his return to duty. Any further violations will result in termination. The room erupted. Reporters shouting questions. People cheering. Others booing. I just sat there, trying to process what I'd heard. Not termination. Not firing. But consequences. Real consequences. Acknowledgement that what had happened to me was wrong. It wasn't everything I'd hoped for. But it was something. It was more than most people in my position ever got. Daniel stood abruptly and walked out of the room without a word, his face red, his jaw clenched. The reporters swarmed me. Sarah fielded questions while I tried to find words. How do you feel about the decision? I wish it had been stronger. But I'm grateful they believed me. What message does this send? That speaking up matters. That the system can work, even if it doesn't always. That people like me, people who are foreign, who are different, deserve to be treated with dignity. What's next for you? I thought about that question. What was next? Back to my life. Back to work. Back to saving money for my sister's visa. Back to training, to building the life I came here to build. But also, knowing that I'd fought. That I'd stood up. That I'd refused to be invisible. I'm going to keep living, I said simply. That's what's next. The news coverage was extensive. Some praised the decision. Others criticized it as too lenient. Danielle's union appealed, calling the punishment excessive. I didn't follow all of it. I'd given enough of myself to this story. But I did keep one thing: the letter I received 6 weeks after the decision. It came in a plain envelope, no return address. Inside was a single handwritten note. Thank you for what you did. I'm an officer in the same district as Daniels. I've seen him do what he did to you to other people. I wanted to speak up but didn't have the courage. You gave me that courage. There are good cops who want to do right. Your fight helps us do our jobs better. Thank you. It was unsigned. I folded that letter carefully and put it in my drawer, next to the ruined notebook from that night, next to my grandmother's copy of Anna Karenina. Reminders of where I'd been, what I'd survived, who I'd become. A year later, my sister arrived. I picked her up at the airport, held her as she cried, showed her the apartment that was now ours, the city that was now home. She asked about the incident. She'd seen the news coverage back in the old country. Are you still angry? She asked. I thought about that. Was I still angry? Sometimes, I admitted. But mostly I'm just tired of being angry. I want to focus on building something better. Did it change anything? All of it. I thought about Daniels, about whether he'd learned anything from his suspension. I thought about the system, about whether one hearing had made any real difference. I don't know if it changed the system, I said, but it changed me. It taught me that I don't have to accept being treated like I'm less than human. It taught me that speaking up is worth it, even when it's hard, even when the outcome isn't perfect. She smiled. Grandmother would be proud of you. Yeah, I said softly. I think she would. I still train 6 days a week. I still work hard. I still walk the same streets where Daniels stopped me that night. Sometimes I see police cars and feel my heart rate increase. Sometimes I remember that spotlight, that voice, that feeling of being powerless. But then I remember what came after. The fight. The testimony. The decision. The letter. I remember that I'm not powerless. None of us are. We're only powerless if we accept it, if we stay silent, if we let fear win. And I'm done being afraid. So if you're reading this, if you've ever been made to feel like you don't belong, like you don't matter, like your dignity is negotiable, know this. You belong. You matter. Your dignity is not negotiable. And if someone treats you otherwise, you have every right to fight back. Not with violence. Not with hate. But with truth. With persistence. With the stubborn refusal to be invisible. That's the lesson I learned from Officer Daniels, though it's not the lesson he meant to teach. He meant to teach me my place. Instead, he taught me my power. And that's a lesson I'll carry for the rest of my life, in this country that's still learning to be home, in this body that's been forged by iron and hardship, in this heart that's been broken and rebuilt stronger. I'm Anatoly. I'm a legal resident. I'm a brother, a friend, a worker, a fighter. I'm not just a story. I'm a person. And I refuse to be anything less. The weight of the iron taught me that strength isn't just physical. It's moral. It's emotional. It's the strength to stand up when standing up is dangerous. The strength to speak when speaking could cost you everything. The strength to believe in your own worth when the world tells you you're worthless. That's the strength that matters. That's the strength that changes things. Not overnight. Not perfectly. Not easily. But it changes things. And in the end, that's all any of us can do. Change things, one choice at a time, one stand at a time, one refusal to be silent at a time. Until the world we live in looks a little more like the world we deserve. Until dignity isn't something you have to fight for. Until walking home from the gym while being foreign isn't a crime. We're not there yet. But we're closer than we were. And that's because of people who refuse to accept less. People like me. People like you. People who understand that justice isn't given. It's claimed. One story at a time.